Okay, looks like they've changed the interface since I last did this. So, oh, good, there are comments. Okay, so let me make sure it's not quite cutting off my head. All right, hello. So, I wanted to come on here because uh, there's been a kind of shift that I'm making in how I do what I do. Um, key keyframed late where's the current, so I don't know what it's doing. So I'm getting some kind of warnings and it's jumping out at me. Okay, I don't know how to deal with any of the tech stuff. So hopefully you can hear me. If you're here and you can hear me okay, go ahead and type in the comments. Let me know. Let me see that you're here. So I've been looking at a kind of vision for where I want things to go, for the world around me, for quite some time. I've I see some really beautiful possibilities for for the human race, for where we're going. I see a lot of scary stuff. All these big challenges about like with climate change and AI and all of that. This thing is really determined to give me a bazillion errors and is really objecting. Sorry, this thing is trying to give me errors that jump up in my face, and it's creating some problems. Okay. I think I can just ignore them. So, um, when I look at what is needed for for the human race to actually be good at, to be sane and kind, to be collectively sane and kind, for us to really address the kinds of problems that are showing up as homelessness and as these huge shifts that are leaving many people jobless from AI, the fears of, I don't know, is AI going to kill us all? Um, I mean, on the trend so far of us all dying all at once is pretty low, but you only need once. Um, but any number of other issues, we don't seem to be collectively very good at orienting to a kind of big picture. There's a kind of quality where what we're dealing with, what we're looking at, looks to me kind of like it's the stage where in evolution the organisms were evolving to a point of being multicellular blobs to things that needed a nervous system. The human race does not have the ability to think coherent thoughts yet. Individual humans don't have a really great ability to think coherent thoughts, but at least we have an impression. And if we pay attention, if we really pay attention, we can notice I'm right here. So I can go into a lot of detail, but the gist of it is that there's something that I see for what we can collectively do that is better than the default alternative trajectories. Um, that alternative requires doing something like building a nervous system for the human race. Depending on what kind of analogy you want, maybe we already kind of have one. We have an internet that's amazing. Uh, it's sort of like having a default mode network. um, but we don't have something that looks like the capacity to turn our collective attention intentionally. If you look at the human race as a whole, it has a lot of the properties of um, a scared and traumatized toddler, sort of fixating on all kinds of random scattered things. So what I've been doing, I got a very clear sense of this vision. I had been working on it for a long time, but I got a very clear sense of it back in 2019, right? About a little over 4 years ago. And there's a beautiful story to tell about how that happened, but the important part is that there's something that I see clearly. And I don't know all of it. I don't know all the pieces, but I do know that to the extent that what I see is beautiful, right, sane, and kind, there's a kind of participation that some people have to choose to do. I'm one of them. I'm choosing to do it. I know some other people who are choosing to do their own versions of it. That requires a kind of transformation of oneself. It sounds very abstract described this way. The kind of things I'm looking at have a lot in common with spirituality, but it's not really about spirituality. I mean, it's at least not in the kind that people usually talk about. It's not about some kind of belief system. What I'm looking at is the need to embody recognition of truth, and for that embodiment to be reflected clearly in the individual mind. I'm going to just name some pieces. These are like components of a machine. When you actually understand the whole machine, the whole thing clicks together. And it's not just a mental understanding, but you can sort of get a mental picture of it and get some hint. But this is like a machine, and it has several parts. And once they all kind of click together, it runs on its own. So one of the components of this is recognizing the resonance of truth and having it reflected in your own mind. A huge subcomponent of that is that, I mean, implicit as to what this is, it means that the thing that I'm seeing cannot be something that you listen to me or to anyone else and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to believe that. It has to have much more the flavor of when someone points out to you, like if I mention, do you have feet? For many people who spend a lot of time on the internet, and if you're like watching this and you're hopping on, you're going, okay, it's probably a little surprising to go, oh right, I've got feet, right? Right. Intellectually, it's not like a surprising piece of information, but the knowing is not made of an idea. It's something that if I said, oh, actually, I misspoke, you don't have feet, like, whatever, right? So there's a hint there about the nature of truth in a way that's very clean and isn't about what's received. What's received is pointing out. What's received is awareness. But once you've received it, it's yours. So in some sense, part of my job, part of my divine job, I guess, is to put myself out of a job and to point out the things that I see enough that it's irrelevant that I was the one that pointed it out. So that's one component of this machine. I'm describing it in abstract. There are very concrete elements of tuning. I see a lot of there's a thing to rescue in the thing that would deserve to be called mathematics if the name mathematics had not been taken for a kind of abusive art, a method of emotionally tormenting children, and of trying to build capacities under duress. There's something beautiful to rescue in the art there. Its true form. Right? So there's something there. And I have a whole rant about math. That's actually, I have one on Twitter that is the most viral thing I've ever written. If you go to my Twitter profile, it's twitter.com/Morphenius. I'm Morphenius everywhere. You can also find it on my profile. All my stuff you can find on my profile and via my link tree. So there's this quality of truth. There's a quality of switching which fuel you're coming from. Many people are, like most people, most of the culture is focused on some version of hurting in order to drive themselves forward. It's like, all right, I need to make sure that I send that email. Okay, what am I going to do if I'm not going to, like, I need a job and I'm going to run out of money, and like all of this is a kind of inducing pain. And it's a little tricky to talk about in quick succession. Here I'm grabbing a couple of pieces to highlight and giving you just a snapshot of what all of these components are. And each one could stand an hour, a couple of hours, a few weeks just to really dive into. But it's not about the mind. I'll get to that in a moment. It's not fundamentally about the mind. So the piece I'm naming here, this bit about the pain that drives everyone, almost everyone, and it drives society as a whole. It's the thing that causes blindness. It's the thing that makes it so that you put up anti-homelessness measures like making all of the park benches have some kind of rivets in the middle so that no one can sleep on them. That makes sense if your idea is to keep homelessness out of the park, but no one's asking where do the homeless go. I mean, of course, some people are literally asking it, but it's not an integrated question. It's not instead of here, go here. It's go away. There's a similar quality with prisoners, with people that we lock away. There's this quality of away, like away is some kind of place. We throw things away. There's this whole environmentalist thing of before you throw it away, remember, there is no away. But even that environmentalist gesture, it often is taken with a kind of guilt, or guilting, I should say. The quality like feel bad about the fact that you're contributing to landfill. You're hurting the earth, you monster. And even if it were true, why drive it with pain? So there's something to see clearly about learning how to name these things, that there's a difference between before you throw it away, remember that there's no away. And before you throw it away, remember, there is no away. Like noticing the difference between those two, noticing that there's something very clean and clear about perceiving even the pain of the world. And that you don't have to force yourself to do something about it. Right? Caring is just there. You can be care driven. Right? So these are just two components. There are some components having to do with embodiment and embodied movement of energy. There's an element having to do with tracking the depths of what truly matters. Right now I'm in the midst of a really deep sinking into that component. I could easily go for an hour or so sharing that, but I want to acknowledge that part of the reason why I feel struck with I need to change how I'm doing what I'm doing is because I'm much more in touch with death and with what matters at this moment than even I am normally. Just to be clear, there's nothing particular going on. It's not like I'm dying or someone close to me or anything like that. In many ways, that would be easier. But regardless of the details there, mostly I just wanted to share some element of where I am right now. I mean, physically, I have this weird banner back here. I'm in Berkeley using an office space. I just didn't want to wait until I get home to start clearing out some things. So, yeah, so there's a whole arc of pieces like that, elements having to do. Yeah, Marcella notes new moon and eclipse. Is today the new moon? That would be. I've stopped tracking the astrological stuff, so or astronomical for that matter. Yeah. In any case, so what? Okay, so it is. Well, here we go. Great. New beginnings. Okay. So what I've been doing up to this point has had, like, I've been trying to make it so that my income is based on bringing these components forward. And there's a whole picture about, let me say a little bit more about where this goes, so what the vision is. There's an engine that it is actually, I want to say it's to each person's personal benefit. There's a place to adopt. There's a place where that's a little bit there's a piece of that's not the full truth, but it's not like it's a trick. It's more like an awful lot of our normal way of functioning in modern society. And I say modern, like at least the last couple thousand years. um, but the westernized world for sure has this quality. Um, there's a, uh, a strong drift in the direction of, it's more than a drift, of you participate by not noticing. There are pains that you induce you on yourself. You make part of the fabric of your habits, and then you don't pay attention to them. And then you get these little snippets of um, of goodness throughout life. Now, if your life feels really good, that may seem very strange, and maybe it doesn't apply to you. But for almost everybody, what's going on is that we've contracted our sense of what good is. And we're not aware of nearly as much of the world as we could be and as our hearts want to be. Again, I make that statement like I'm speaking for everybody. I don't know most people. But best as I can tell, this is true for most people, I think. So what happens is that as you adopt this kind of engine shift, a couple of things happen. One is that the places where your life is stuck start to free up. You start to be able to engage more wholeheartedly with the people in your life. The places where you can't seem to move, or the recurring problems, like where you keep dating the same problem in different people over and over again, those kinds of things shift. They sort of have to. You end up with more freedom. You end up with more, I want to say something like power, but it's very easy to misunderstand what I mean by that. And generally speaking, you get stuff that is good. But there is something that before those shifts appear could be called a cost. And it's also during, and it's after, and it's ongoing, and it's the cost is that you can't avoid the truth anymore. You have to see every place where you hurt and you've been ignoring, and that can seem like it makes things worse because you can't unsee it. So a lot of people who are drawn to me already know very well what I'm talking about. They've had it in bits and snippets, or some full-on blast. Realizing that you are going to die someday, and what that actually implies is it's an intense version of this stuff. It's more than an abstraction, but it becomes something real. Yeah. So this can be very intense. It doesn't mean that your life would become something that is what you think you want. Instead, it becomes what you need and what is precious. It becomes aligned with your heart's deepest calling. It sounds really good, but in the middle of it, it can be very intense. It can be very miserable. Right? So I don't want to sell this as everybody wants this. You want this to be your biggest person. There's something to that. There is something to that. But it would be dishonest, and a huge chunk of what I am trying to bring into the world, what I'm trying to articulate, what I'm trying to make accessible. That's a big chunk of where I'm going here. I want to make this stuff accessible. Not just financially, but definitely that. But a big chunk of what I'm bringing has to do with integrating the human mind in the process so that it serves this unfolding. So a lot of that has to involve a sense of, hey, just so you know, let's spell this out in as much detail as each person is able to understand on each step of the path. And so we're honoring the mind even where it's a little crazy or a lot crazy. So what I'm seeing is something that many people will want absolutely nothing to do with. Some people will think they want something to do with, and then will taste the real thing and will freak out and will run away and then go back to the numbest life they can manage for a while and then recalibrate. That's perfectly fine. It's not for everyone. But for those of us who have a sort of, I don't know exactly what it is, something like a calling to bring this clarity in, then here's what I think happens. We become fractal reflections of the clear, omniscient mind of humanity. That doesn't mean each one of us gets to know everything. This is not a prize. This is a description of the job. It is beautiful. It is clarifying. It matters. It absolutely matters. And it is a precious honor for me to be able to play the role that I am playing here. And there are times where I really wish that I could just not have anything to do with it. I just want to, crawl in my hole and watch a bunch of TV and snuggle up to some woman that I can just feel closeness with, and like have kids and just, I mean, I can probably have many of these things, possibly all of them, but it's the instead of. There's a part of me that sort of freaks out, and it no longer has any say, not any real say. So some people will choose a path like I am choosing. And for such people, we basically come to form part of the nervous system of the human race. Or you could say the capacity for consciousness to be reflected in the human race as a single entity. So that the human race as a single entity can have meditative clarity. Now, I'm not talking about an organization. That wouldn't work. I'm not talking about something that has me in some kind of great position of power. That wouldn't work. You can't do it that way. We can't do it that way. What I'm talking about instead is that there is something that is far more pure than any person can be. A sort of template for, it's a little bit like we've been running a particular operating system in each of us so that culture as a piece of software can run on all of us. And I'm calling for a sort of an operating system upgrade. This analogy works annoyingly well. Like you have to reboot your computer to do an operating system upgrade, and on the inside that reboot feels like dying. So there's a thing where, okay, this is this can be challenging. For some people, they'll get really excited about that with like, oh, look, there's an intensity I can lean towards. But this has nothing to do with intensity. Intensity is another distraction. There's just truth. There's just a clear truth. But right now, if no one were to take up this mantle, and people are taking it up, it's not like I'm the only one, I'm sitting here alone, but I have a particular angle on it. I have a particular style of clarity, and the more voices we have speaking directly to the core, the easier it is for us to talk directly and clearly about it without getting lost in the confusions. And one of the confusions is where people start drifting towards really wanting intensity. Really wanting, oh yeah, I'm in it for like yes, the ego death and the whole rebirth process, and yeah, it's like I'm scared, and that's like, and it's, if you ever get confused about this, I recommend talking to a bereaved parent, resonating with them. It's not about the intensity. It's not about how glorious the journey is. There's something beautiful to that. There's something wholesome about that. But what I'm talking about is not a matter of some kind of intense, glorious conquering. I'm talking about clarity. I'm saying that there are things that the human race needs, and that the human race needs to grow up enough to provide those things for itself, that it can do so, and that it is like something to participate in that conscious awakening of the collective. So I hold that anybody who understands the core deeply enough, I mean, for one thing, if you understand the core deeply enough, you will be installing it. You can't not. That's how this works. There's it's self-installing because it is aligned with what you know is true, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. But each step can be and has to be deeply consensual. So what I want to do is put forward in the clearest way I can, and I'll be doing this in many iterations. It's not like I'm gonna, all right, I'm done. I want to put this sort of kernel of the operating system forward into the public in ways that are as accessible as I can see how to make them. Something that when you see it for yourself, it's a little bit like, it hurts my heart that that the following is such an unknown analogy. I even hesitate to give it because of how toxic the terminology and the attitudes are around it. I'll give it, and then I want to mention something about it. If I tell you a mathematical idea, like lots of people learned the Pythagorean theorem in school. The square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides. This is a thing that you can do to get distance, like for on the Cartesian plane, blah, blah, blah. Many people will experience something like cringing or nausea hearing me mention these things. And the cringing and the nausea is part of what I've come to tag as, oh, that's math trauma. And we can get into whether that's the right word or the right structure. Is that too dramatic? I don't. It's a structure, and it blocks the truth. It keeps something from being seen clearly. That's not said with any blame. I'm describing it. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the painful thing that was inflicted under duress. I'm actually describing part of how the duress happens. If I just tell you this thing about the Pythagorean theorem, and then I make you practice it, and even if I show you a quick proof, but you have this sense of like I'm in this authoritarian situation where this person is going to shame me, or I'm not going to graduate, or I'm going to starve, or people are going to make fun of me, or whatever if I don't get this right, and I'll be shamed for it, blah blah blah, and it's just awful. That's just terrible. And in that kind of situation, that means that your understanding of what I'm saying about the Pythagorean theorem is received, and that keeps me in control. But if I can instead show you, hey, when I watch what is true about your life, I have a sense that this math theorem I know is actually relevant for you. Would you like me to show you? Here's where I think it connects, but like I can't describe it in detail until I show you the theorem, right? And I can invite that, and if you go, I'm like, okay, cool, we're good. But if you lean in, then I can go, all right, great. Here is the theorem. Here is how it connects, and here is the proof, so that you can see it for yourself. There's something very powerful that can happen once you see the click for yourself, which is that it doesn't matter anymore that I'm the one that told you. It touches tender places for me because I see so much of the suffering that happens in the world is because of traumatized outsourcing of one's responsibility to know and understand. And I don't want that anymore. Anybody can do what they like with their life. But I want this to be a freedom for all people. I had no idea that was going to hit me that hard. So, what I want to do is offer the proof, offer the explanations about why this is important, not to lecture. None of this has to do with lecturing. I mean, I enjoy attention. I enjoy getting to share the knowledge I have, and a little bit there's this spark of, I said this, I said it well. There's a bit of that. And I can enjoy that. I try not to feel shame about it because there's no point. There's like, that's true of this person. But there's something that is so much more important for every soul to get. So my hope, or not for every soul, but for every soul who wants it, and there's a kind of, I don't know, a bodhisattva core that has a sense of, I really hope everyone wants this and recognizes it. Daniel jokes, I'm going to put you on a pedestal for showing me the Pythagorean theorem. It's kind of funny. It's called the Pythagorean theorem, huh? From the cult of Pythagoras. Yeah. So it's also not like I've invented the idea of people having insight for themselves. That's stupid. Everyone has pieces of these knowings. It's just, I mean, even in spiritual circles where folk will talk about things that are closely related, I often see people falling to the waves of memetics that they don't see. In other words, I haven't said anything about memetics here. If you follow me a whole lot, you might hear me talk about it. But the human mind seems to have so much more comfort with belief systems than it does with the nakedness of not knowing, together with the clarity of clear knowing. That those two can paradoxically be combined. That the truth that you find, for instance, in math, there's a reason I keep tapping on math as an example, but like having vivid certainty that the ideas in math are just true because, well, like that's what math is. Math is the true stuff. That's so different from the kind of clarity that lets you see that if the entire rest of the human race just started saying, oh yeah, we were confused, 1 + 1 is not 2, you might ask, oh, what did we miss? But if their answer amounts to God works in mysterious ways, or some people are excluded, some people feel excluded by that equation, if you see clearly, there's no temptation to say, oh, well, maybe 1 + 1 isn't 2 then, because that would hurt feelings. There's a vividness instead of, oh, if literally every other human being on earth switches from believing that 1 + 1 is 2, for those reasons, then everyone on earth has just gone insane, and I am the only sane one left on this point. Not as a matter of gripping, but as a matter of simple fact. So, if I can put forward what I have to share clearly enough, then anyone can take what I say and derive their own flavor, their own version, even if it seems to significantly modify pieces, because this is like submitting a proof. It's like submitting a study. There's something that, I'm probably missing some important pieces. And also, I don't want to do too many of the technical metaphors. I think I've sort of, I have too much of a burden of conversational debt for a public conversation about this at this point. But there's something important about the fact that each person needs to see how it relates to them. So it has nothing to do with even how I'm presenting it. How I'm presenting what I present is for some people and not for others. Even if they would otherwise gladly lap up what I'm saying if it weren't for the way that I say it. Here we are. Each person has to derive their own version. I can just be one of the many people pointing out how. So, up to this point, what I've been doing is trying to make it so that my income stream is aligned with my doing this. But in practice, what this has done is contracted a lot of what I'm doing behind closed doors and paywalls. And that's not how I want to do what I'm doing. There's a very clear path that I see about if for a given person, they can switch from pain fuel to desire fuel, if they can clearly get the thing about truth, if they can come to see how their minds work by direct perception, refining their sight so that they can see their minds, so that they can see energy. My apologies to the people who are trapped in the style of materialist reductionism that makes referring to energy sound too spooky and vague. If you like, you can pretend I said vibes. Like the way that some music just feels different than others. Like classical feels different from pop. Like what is it that feels different about them? Well, there's a kind of energy or something. Right? So get somebody to be able to have these kinds of shifts. Being able to perceive the flow of memetics in public conversation and in their own intertwining, in their own embodied dialogue with this. The ability to move energies in themselves. Today, the common term for this is trauma processing. Being able to actually move the energies instead of just observing, yep, I'm stupid this way. Right, well, let me put in some rules. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense that you would think that. And that hurts. So let's find the path to freedom and actual healing that isn't made of rah-rah bullshit. Can you see through every paradigm and directly dialogue with every other human on earth? Clearly. I mean, I can't, but I see the need. And so my hope is to invite the attempt so that we can move in that direction. So some of these switches I'm talking about are binary. Once you see that you are fueled by pain, in some sense, you're done. It's just that the completion is in the future. When you see that you're fueled by pain, you're going to stop being able to function that way. And you're going to want to find some other way to motivate yourself. Once you see how your mind works, like there are pieces of how the mind works that create loops with the body, that once you see it, and this becomes clear, so it's not just an idea, but you get it, the way that you get that 1 + 1 is 2. When you get it, oh, now I can see how patterns unfold in me. Once you get the note of truth, and you can tell the difference between what is plausible and what is necessary, and you understand the relationship of play and how play interfaces with the development of psychotechnologies and what psychotechnologies are for. There are a couple of spots here where there's a very clear before and after. Afterwards, there's work to do. But now you know what work to do. So what I'm hoping is, instead of putting things behind a paywall, I'm sure I'll still keep some things behind a paywall, but it's not about the nature of how to do this stuff. I'll explain the kind of general direction I'm feeling into. I'm missing most of the details. This is very fresh. It's just very clear that I need to speak in the fresh moment, not put the freshness into my thinking and planning, because this produces a loop that I've seen now, and I don't want to engage in that way anymore. So I'm jumping in raw, confused about the details, but clear about the direction, because I'm following the direction, not the details. So Um, what I want to put forward is basically how to get those snaps, how to get those binary clicks, and from there, what kind of thing work after that would be. This is not just mental understanding, but it includes mental understanding. This is one of these maps that makes more sense the farther you go on the terrain that the map is describing. um, so that's the stuff that I want to start putting out more in public. I need to figure out some things about the interface, doing a bunch of Facebook live streams where for some reason there's some sort of basic thing where I can't do a live stream that lasts less than half an hour and generally goes about an hour or so. Even if I think, like, I just want to say this fast thing. This fast thing takes at least 20 minutes and usually goes an hour. But a lot of people can't interface that way. A lot of people interface better by writing. Also, doing it all on Facebook is kind of terrible. I have some things on YouTube. It's not well organized. I might put more on a blog. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to I want to build something that if someone lands on and wants to orient to, they can. They have some idea of where to start. Also, if people are just following me, they can sort of jump in wherever I am, wherever I'm talking about. Because as an engine, it's a little tricky to put together because it's a little bit like if you're building an arch. It's hard to get the arch scaffolded properly until you have the keystone in, but if you just put the keystone there before you've built the other stones, then it'll just fall down. So, but if you get it scaffolded just right and then you put in the keystone, now it's a very strong structure. There's something like that where these pieces reinforce each other, and you end up with a BS clearing system that becomes better over time. But because of that nature, it's actually more circular than arch-like. There isn't a keystone, as far as I know. But it means that it almost doesn't matter where you jump in, because it's a matter of sort of finding a scaffold such that all of the pieces click together. And then when you see enough of these pieces and you get a couple of the binary switches, then the whole thing becomes an engine and it revs. It turns over and then you're going. Then you find out whether you are grateful to have, I mean, you'll become grateful, but it may take a while, or whether you wanted this engine. It's stepping into a very real game. Okay. So there's a lot of details about the structure that I don't know. But there is one piece I plan on continuing. I'll be doing it differently. I haven't sorted out exactly how I'm doing it differently. Oh, thank you, Alicia. Alicia mentions, love this analogy. Good. So I'm running a program. I've been running a program for 2 years called Mage, which I've been running as a container where I've been trying to guide people through getting these various clicks. And this has been a particular kind of frustrating for a while because for a couple of different reasons. Not all the details are relevant. Let me just name where I'm going. Let me name one thing that's misaligned so that you can feel what the issue is. You can sort of get some energetic sense of what's the vibe, what's the issue here. I'm not going to go into all the details. I'll try not to. But I want to name the direction that I'm thinking of. The container I've been running has, because it's been my main source of income, has gestured me towards wanting to teach in it, saturate it with a kind of aesthetic, to put out hints of what I am offering with some kind of rationale about why I'm offering it behind a paywall. And there is some reality to it. If I am guiding people through the hard parts of getting these binary switches, it's really helpful if they don't just run away from me in the middle of us transitioning through that, because now a part of them was relying on support and now they don't have any. And in some sense, what I'm doing, by doing this in public, it's a little bit worse on that axis, because it means that people can get exposed to it thinking, oh, I want some spiritual stuff. But generally when they say spiritual, they actually mean something much more fluffy or sensational or entertaining. And what I am talking about is so vividly, vividly real that when that becomes clear, it can be very disconcerting. So some people are going to bump into that, get more reality than they were trying for, and they will have seen and not be able to unsee something. And then they won't have support, and that sucks. But I think trying to tiptoe around that possibility has been making it far too slow for me to share the piece that I am trying to share. Sort of what my job is, I want to say. So, what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to put this engine as forward as possible. How to build it. Here's the blueprint. Here's the manual. Oh, if you're interested, I want to make sure that you have some sense of the seriousness of what we're talking about. And here's where I think you can go with the step that you're in. Here's that, if you want it. Right? Oh, you're confused about this part of the proof? Okay, try permuting it in this direction. Like my PhD is in math education, so a lot of my attention is basically on how can you relate to truth with the degree of reverence and sovereignty that is in mathematics, but apply it to the deepest parts of the human heart and soul? So doing that in public, and then continue. Alicia's mentioning the support is very important, easy to get lost without it. Yeah. So I'm going to continue to offer Mage. What I'm going to do with that is instead make it more a matter of, if you've gotten a taste of this and you want my support, that's how I will hold you in. Like, hold you in. That's not, I mean, I meant that in a supportive way, and I noticed the words don't sound quite right. That's as a container in which I can hold you. Ideally, people notice before they get some kind of pop and are freaking out, because I don't want to have people enter any of my containers under duress. That's terrible. But I want people to also have the freedom to recognize that it doesn't matter who holds them. What matters is that they are held. So if you hear what I'm doing and you bring that to some other kind of like a meditation teacher, or you do it on your own, you're just happy with journaling or whatever, like that's fine. There's some very powerful places where I'm pretty sure most people are really going to super want somebody to help them through. But it'll be obvious when you hit those. So there's a question of how to be kind and responsible in public that I haven't exactly sorted out yet. But I can't hold back anymore. So there's a third piece to this. So one is, here is the engine. This goes in public. Here's a support structure for those who want to work on integrating the engine and deepening the skills. That's another piece I didn't really mention about Mage, because there are two different issues. One is you get the engine at all. It clicks. It's not entirely binary. You find that there's several different shift points, but when you get what's going on, when you wake up from the Matrix, there's a difference between waking up from the Matrix and then learning Kung Fu. Like those are two different things. But there's like Mage is a container that I'll be continuing to hold, that's both for, if you come in order to learn the engine, I'll have a space. I'm thinking of doing something like Mage Part 1 and Mage Part 2, where Part 1 is, this is for the engine, and it may not last longer than thus and such length of time. And we'll modify it a little bit for each person's case as I'm watching them. But the idea is that I don't want this to be an ongoing thing. It's not meant to be an ongoing thing. This is meant to transition so that you have clarity about what your role is. And then having a part 2 that is more like a yoga studio or a meditation hall or a martial arts dojo, where any of these skills, like this is where we learn Kung Fu. This is where we master the skills that do go ever deeper. Right now, Mage is kind of like that, but it's sort of blended together, and I don't want that anymore. I want to name the core. I want to help people through the core. There's a third component, which I haven't figured out exactly how I want to deal with this. But there is a way that this whole structure needs to interact with the world. This is kind of automatic. You do it by, like, you go through these kinds of transitions and then you're plugged in. Then you find yourself talking to people. Like I just spent a week near the Bay Area connecting with people who each have basically landed on their own versions of these things. None of them are students of mine. Is that true? Yes. Yes, none of them have ever been students of mine as far as I know. Well, okay, I mean, a whole bunch of them came to some workshops where I was a teacher. But that feels like a past life. Just remember, wait, I know a bunch of these people because they came to Center for Applied Rationality workshops, and I was one of the chief instructors there. Right. And that was kind of spirituality. It was just before I knew anything about what I was doing. Then, in any case, there's still something very important, as best as I can tell, about a step that goes beyond this. This gets back to the thing about there is no way. There is a style of attention that I see as necessary for the human race to cultivate, which is an awareness, sort of like the sense of mindfulness, an awareness of the non-being of the magical land of away. That's a negative of a negative, so I want to flip it around and name the positive briefly. The sense in which, when you flush the toilet, that goes somewhere. You can do this abstractly as an individual, but there's actually some work that goes into being aware of how systems work. How what happens after you flush the toilet interfaces with things like the politics of trade with China. This may seem a little random, but it's not at all. This is maybe a little more obvious if you look at how we deal with recycling. And up until recently, we would ship our recycling to China to deal with. I think that may still be going on. I'm a little behind the times on the details there. But there's a kind of systems perception that becomes more available, that if you don't have this basic engine in place, ends up getting saturated with all kinds of garbage and gobbledygook. Well, we have to stand up for our rights. Right, you cannot solve the culture wars that way. We cannot do it. I don't care how loudly you scream. I don't care how certain you are of which side is correct and which side is the devil. So there is a kind of deep, deep maturity that is called for in order to orient to the reality of the world as it is, the truth of our shared time, our capacity for memory, like the way that, for instance, there's no public conversation that I can find about Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act back in, God, was that, I think that was, now my sense of years is off. I need to check how much time how much deep time I've been saturated in. But when he was trying to get the trucker protest to break up, that was last year. That was in 2022, around January or February, if I remember right. And the reason that's so important is because it highlights something about the nature of power and how how governments and a global banking system are intertwining in very, thank you, Alicia says February 2022. Um, like this, that was at least as significant an indicator of where we are as Putin's invasion of the Ukraine. Putin's invasion of the Ukraine is something that can be explained in psychological terms, in terms of an individual, namely Putin. I mean, plus a context. But the thing with Trudeau highlights something systemic. Maybe it's personality to Trudeau, but the fact is that that was a power he could enact. And now that it's not an active threat, we're not talking about it. This is dangerous. This is a little bit like having had a cancer scare, and then you zapped it with some radiation once and it went into total remission, and you go, okay, great, now I don't have to worry about it, and then you go on to the rest of your life. But what caused the cancer? We're going to see bigger versions of that. Okay? Now, if you can only hear that by getting scared, and you go, yeah, that is something. We do need to talk about that. That's an issue. That's why I say that you have to switch out your pain fuel for desire fuel first. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to at least get to the point where it is possible to speak of your most hated enemies with kindness without suppressing anything in yourself. If you can't do that, you cannot participate as a sovereign, sober adult in conversations about what the world is facing. That doesn't mean that you can't say things. It doesn't mean that you can't influence them, but it does mean that you can't do so in ways that will help the world heal. It will create sanity and kindness. So it has to start at home. It has to start here. So I've been looking at that for a long time. I've been wanting to create something that I keep wanting to call the world arena. I don't have structure for that yet, but I can feel some hints in that direction. So this is a sort of snapshot of what I'm looking at. If you follow me anywhere, you will see this. You'll see me starting to put things together. I may start putting forward math koans, basically, because I think that there's something very deep and important to reclaim in the true spiritual and sovereign art of mathematics. I have a rant about this on Twitter. I want to make the spiritual pieces. I hesitate to use the word spiritual in this case because, but every frame has been co-opted to nonsense. So here we are. But I want to. I'll keep using terrible language for this because terrible language is better than no language, I guess. I want to put forward the blueprints for this engine and the rationale for why it is something that you might want to really care about, with appropriate warning labels. And I want to redesign what I'm doing for my private containers and for my coaching. I don't have as much detail about this for coaching. But I want to rearrange them so that they're entirely in service to this kind of direction. As I was reflecting on this is the direction I need to go in, I feel this is very clear. I'm going to do this. There's this blip in my mind that goes, this does not make financial sense. How is this going to work? How am I going to make any money spending that much time on the math thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, that's cute. It doesn't matter. That's not going to save me from death. Nothing is going to save me from death. But speaking clearly can at least honor what matters. So I may be doing some very silly things by the books, but right things by the heart. So if you follow me on Facebook, you will see me mentioning things there. I'm sure I will share when I'm doing things on Twitter. If I can ever find a non endlessly annoying interface for Instagram, I will do more there as well. Um, it just seems to demand that I do it through the phone, and that's just terrible. I don't want to thumb type everything or argue with copying and pasting between different apps forever. It's just awful. Um, but I will I will do whatever I need to do. In general, I have this link tree that you can access through my profile. Um, I'm probably going to post this video on YouTube, in which case the same thing applies. I have a link tree in my YouTube profile. Um, so if you follow me anywhere, I'll make sure that, well, I won't personally make sure that you personally see what I'm doing, but if you follow me anywhere, you should see when I'm announcing things, when things come out. And I want to compile it into some kind of structure. I haven't worked out that part at all. And it might be that I can't do that until I've done some iterations of just throwing things out in public. Um, yeah. So that's the gist of what I'm feeling, where I'm going with this. Um, I'm curious for the people who are watching. Um, if you have anything that you want to say, any questions or comments, or what's landing for you, I would love to see that. What's landing? In some sense, that's kind of a funny question, actually. It's not really about landing. What is arising in you in contact with this is a better description. Hmm. This thing is so determined. Okay, well, I don't know if there's a delay or what have you. I see that some people are viewing, but I'm not getting any more comments, so I don't want to have this drag out. Oh, here we go. Maybe it's just delayed here. Um, so Alicia mentions, I can relate to being moved to serve without the money piece. I wish I was here from the start. Yeah. I'm a little curious what you mean by here. I'm looking forward to seeing more of you. Thank you. That's very touching. Yeah, there's a way where I've been coming to understand much more deeply what it means to both revere money and recognize it as an illusion, and yeah, coming to really um, oh, you wish you were at this live at the start. Okay, cool. Well, for what it's worth, there will be a replay that happens automatically on Facebook. Um, and once I'm able to, I couldn't get Zoom and Facebook to play nice with each other, so I'm gonna have to hope that I'm gonna have to hope that Facebook relinquishes the video so that I can upload it to other places as well. But you should be able to see it here on replay. Marcella mentions intentional true collectiveness, ... prayer hands. Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone who's been. Oh, let's see, there's a little bit more. Oh, Daniel's asking, I'm curious if the math analogy falls short because it's reductive by nature. No, actually, I don't think the math analogy falls short basically at all. It's problematic in now this mental firing thing that says problematic. That means it's the woke virus. That's not quite what I mean, but it's just like a very simple mental thing that flashes there. But no, the reason I have some hesitation around naming math and mathematics is sort of a clarifying anchor point. And it's not even an analogy, it's an example. Properly seen, it's just a clear example. And also a practice domain. But the reason it's an issue is because most people have gone through a style of learning a thing called math, and they've learned all the things with numbers and shapes in a way that is very traumatizing. It's a social problem. They're taught to solve a social problem under duress, which is how do you please the teacher's demands that you go through these really strange problems and that you solve them, problems you don't care about. But if you don't solve them, then you can't go to recess, or your parents will get mad at you because this is important. But whenever you ask, well, why is it important? What do I need this for? Oh, you need it for the next math class. Or, oh, you'll really need this when you grow up, which, if you haven't noticed, for most people, you don't need the math that you were taught in school. It's good to be able to count. It's often helpful to be able to do basic addition and subtraction. Occasionally, multiplication and division are helpful. But estimation is far more powerful than knowing how to do the long division by hand. And almost nobody understands how to use algebra in a way that is useful for your daily life. There is a very powerful use of algebra for your daily life, and I think that eventually a mature human race will have numerical and quantitative and statistical literacy in a way that is comparable to our ability to read and write language. This will be a very important component, but not because it's taught through duress. It would be because it's taught through meaningfulness and respect for the sovereignty of children. So the reason I hesitate to reference math is because people have such a strong association, very understandably, with a way that they have been abused by a facsimile of mathematics. And as a result, when I try to name examples, they get painted with pain that has nothing to do with the true beautiful core, with the diamond sight. So one of the things I've been thinking of doing for a while is actually doing a kind of math course, although now I'm looking at it going, maybe it'll be a public set of math koans to start with. Alicia asks, please make a math program for home dictated kids. Yes. Yep. Okay, educated. Yeah, that's very much what I want to do. I mean, I don't know about a formal math course with problem sets and so on, but there's definitely a transition that if it's so hard because there's a need for the embodiment of the clarity of what the diamond sight is. But it is a birthright of every human soul. So it's not something that has to be transmitted, it's something that you just need to see. And once you see and you work through the math trauma, which is exactly like working through any other kind of trauma, mostly, like 95% the same, the cultivation of the diamond sight, I'm making up the term diamond sight, the euphoria and the clarity, which are things I'm not making up. Those are actually words mathematicians will use for this. That becomes something very transmittable. So yeah, there's definitely something in that direction I want to look at. So Daniel asks, okay, one more question I was wondering about. You mentioned human race a lot. Is this network of consciousness limited to human beings? No. Like my first gut reaction is no. What does that even mean? What would it mean for it to be limited to human beings? Like human beings, but not their pets. Human beings, but not plants. Human beings, but not mimetic structure. It doesn't make any sense at all. The whole idea that any of this could be just about human beings is part of the confusion and part of the fractured use of mind built on pain fuel. A mind built on pain fuel is deeply fractured and deeply confused, and then papers over its confusion all the time, which is why we believe in a way. It's why we believe it's possible to throw things away and then they don't exist anymore implicitly. And it's also part of why we're able to believe is the wrong word. It's part of why we're able to ignore the inevitability of our own death and what that actually means for our subjective experience. The So the short answer is no, the network of consciousness is not limited to human beings. That would not make any sense at all. Um, it's very easy, I think, for many people. Like Daniel, I know you well enough to suspect that, like, I'm sure that you're not just locked in a kind of fluff thing. But I want to name a thing for others who may be watching this, and I'm pretty sure the same thing for Alicia uh, and Marcella. But the there's a thing to name here when it talks about other consciousnesses. It's awfully I'm trying to feel into how to avoid slipping into an exciting paradigm that is full of nonsense. So to cut clear to the core. So the same way that in order to, like when you go grocery shopping and you write down a grocery list, then you get to the grocery store and you're walking around picking up things, and then you check your list. You're not confused about this piece of paper in your hand. You read the thing and go, oh, right, I did mean to get more pickles. It's not like, oh, that's weird, pickles are on the list. Huh, what a mysterious phenomenon. I guess I should get pickles because God wrote pickles on my list. Like it, you know, there's something about how the list is both intertwined with your mind as an extension, but it is also something verified by something deeper. Unless you do a shared list where you're like with somebody else and you just trust if it's on the list, it's automated, blah, blah, blah. But like if you wrote the list and then you get to the store and you look at the list you wrote, there's a way where you're relating to that, that list in a way that is intertwined with you in a pretty deep way. But it's also, the center of it is in you, not in the paper. The paper is an augmentation. So if I were to say, oh, we're going to evolve your consciousness, but not the consciousness of any part of you that is written on paper, what would that mean? I don't think it means anything. In truth, I am talking about awakening the universe. In the same way that an individual can go through a spiritual awakening, we're talking about having the universe go through a spiritual awakening. Because the universe, as perceived by humans, is the body of the being that human beings seem to be the awakening mind of. At least that's how it appears so far from the perspective of human beings. And that almost certainly includes things that you would want to call beings or consciousnesses that we don't yet know how to orient to. And it can make that sound very deep and mysterious, but I'm talking about things like, what is it like to be a mycelium network? Does that question even make sense? So the really short answer is no. It's not just human consciousness. Okay. So, is there anything else burning or singing in your heart that really needs to be said? I'm going to close this in just a few seconds otherwise. Okay. All right. So unless the delay catches me, oh, William says thank you. Cool. It's neat to see you here. You're quite welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming. There's more coming. Like I said, I endeavor to make these more digestible than having to watch an hour-plus video each time I have something to say. But I also think it's important to be able to feel me as well. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you around.